Hi everyone, this is Robert SK from Drimax Photography. I'm here to take you through how to do frequency separation using a mixer brush. Before we get started, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. First things first, let's open our picture. The picture I'm using is from my friend called Sharon. You can follow her on Instagram. She uses Sharon Stevens Kabuye, and I'll put the link in the description for the raw file for you guys to follow as I do the editing. Step number one, we duplicate our background layer. We say duplicate layer. Let me name it color, because frequency separation, you're separating the color from the texture, or you're separating the low frequency from the high frequency. We shall have a detailed tutorial about all that. After duplicating color, you go to filter, blur, then you go to Gaussian blur. Then in order to set the radius of this blur, you have to look at the texture of the skin. You move this cursor up to a point where you don't see any texture on the skin. That's where I stop. So my value is around 5 to 6. Let me use 6. Step number 2, you duplicate the background layer again. Let me name it texture. And I move this layer to the top. The next step is I go to image, then I go to apply image. What I'm doing now, I'm separating the texture from the color or the tones. So my source is going to be the source file is the name of the image. Then I'm separating the texture from the color. So the layer, I select layer. Channel has to be RGB. Then blending mode is going to be subtract, since I'm subtracting the texture of the color layer. Opacity 100. Scale has to be 2. When you're feeding in, that value has to be the maximum because you're subtracting all the texture from the color. Offset has to be 128. We shall have a tutorial about why that is 128. And you say OK. When you say OK, your image has to look like mine. It has to have a grayish kind of look. But when I zoom in a little bit, you will see that I still have the texture beneath that. So after that, I go to my layer, the texture layer, and I change the blending mode to linear light. So when you look at this, it's like I'm having my original image. Let me try to group the layers so that you can see. I select these two layers and I put them in a group. So this is my frequency separation. When I open this group, you will see two layers, color and texture. Let me show you something. When I unsee the group of the frequency separation, you won't see any difference between my original layer and the group. That means what I've done is I've separated the image into two parts, the color and the texture. When I unsee the texture layer, you see the blurry kind of effect, that is the color. And when I unsee the color, you will see the texture alone. Let me do that when I'm switching off this background layer so that you can see. When I remove the texture, you see the blurry kind of color, and when I put off the color and you see the texture, you see the texture alone. So that means I'm splitting the image into two parts. That is what we call frequency separation. I'm separating color from texture. So now I'm going to use the mixer brush to edit. I go to this tool panel, I go to the brush tool and I select the mixer brush. When you're retouching, you make sure you work with an image. You zoom your image to fit the screen. You don't zoom in a lot because you're working with skin tones, and your diameter has to be a little bit not so small and not so big, just medium. So I go to my mixer brush tool. These are my settings. I'm going to use wet 10, load 10. I'll leave mix at default, flow at 20. So when you start working, you're blending the color depending on which kind of tone. If I'm working in the highlights, I'll work in the highlights alone. If I'm working in the shadows, I'll work in the shadows alone, and so are the midtones. So you have to move your brush in a way the skin was molded. When you look at my forehead, this is how my skin was molded. It goes horizontal, so when I'm moving my brush, I don't have to go the opposite way. So I'm going to do this very fast. Yes, I think I'm done blending. Let me show you a little bit of the before and the after. Okay, let me first finish blending all this. Yeah, don't forget to blend the neck. If the hands feature in the picture, also work on them as well. Make sure you don't change the pattern of the skin as you're working. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please go and subscribe so that you don't miss out a thing on the very many tutorials we are bringing for you. We have very many in stock. Alright, I think I'm done blending. Let me show you a little bit of the before. That is the before and that is the after. It is a rough edit in order not to lengthen the video. So after you're done with the blending, you work on the texture. So as you're going to work on the texture, when you're going to work on the texture, you select the texture layer. You change your tool to the clone stamp tool, this one right there. Your opacity has to be 100, flow 100. The sample has to be on current layer. You check your hardness, it has to be 0, and you select a soft round brush. You can come here and select that one. Yes. So I have to reduce my diameter a little bit so that it is small to the size of the pimples I'm working on. So I start working. You go on clicking on all the pimples and remove them so that you have a clean, a fine texture. Remember, when you're working on texture, you don't have to remove everything. You leave a little bit of naturalness. All you remove are the temporary pimples and the pores and the spots. So I'm going to take this very fast so that the video is not so long. Remember, when you're working, you don't remove the natural spots. For example, this one, I'm not going to remove that one because it is her natural birthmark. Yes, I think I'm done with the texture. Let me show you a little bit of the before and the after. That is the before, this is the after. Yes, that is how easy you can work with a mixer brush to edit your beauty portraits. When you see the before and the after, you see that I've blended the skin very well, but I've retained the naturalness of the skin. I've only removed the pimples and the spots and blending the color. Yes, thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification in order not to miss out a thing. Remember to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Drimax Photography. I will also leave the link for my model today, Sharon Stevens Kawiye. You will see. Don't forget to buy our presets. They are on our website, www.drimaxphotography.com. I'll leave the link in the description below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.